Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Outside You Live, powered by Vespa and Aprilia. We are, of course, building up to the India versus South Africa series. We've talked a lot about India. India have hogged the headlines because of the squad that they have selected, because of the players they have not selected, etc. Amidst all this, there's another team, the South African side, that has quietly sneaked into our country. They've made their way to Lucknow, they completed quarantine, they are on the field training, and we are just one day away from the first ODI between India and South Africa. We'll get down to the analysis of the South African squad. But before that, here's a look at the SXR 160.
You're late.
Don't just live life, maxify it.
Welcome back to the Outside You Live, powered by Vespa and Aprilia. I have with me Ananya Upendran and our very own Claire Cowan. Good to have you back, Claire, for the analysis of the South African squad. How have you been?
Yeah, very well, thank you. And it's great to be back. I'm really excited about this upcoming series. It's going to be fantastic.
True, Ananya, your thoughts first. Let's start with you. South Africa yet again with Sune Lee leading the side. No Danny van Niekerk, no Chloe Tryon. Your first thoughts about yet another captaincy series for Sune Lee?
I'm first of all excited that South Africa are here and the series is no longer a secret. We all know when the teams are playing and all that. So, excited to see the series, I guess, unfold starting tomorrow. But as far as the South African squad are concerned, I guess they look like a settled unit. We saw the same group of players along with Masawara Class play against Pakistan earlier. I think in Jan-Feb. So, I think they've come in with a group that has a decent amount of cricket under their belt, a very settled side. And I think Sune Lees is kind of looks like she's settled into a bit of a captaincy role. She understands, or she's beginning to understand how to get the best out of her players. So, hopefully in India, we see the best of that South African team because they are coming off cricket. India aren't. So going into the first game, I think South Africa probably have a bit of a leg up.
South Africa have the legs up, says Ananya, but we showed you a commercial of the SXR 160. The tagline says Maxify Life. And Claire, I think Sune Lees is kind of maxifying her chances as the captain, regularly standing up for Danny van Niekerk. You wouldn't fault anybody for assuming that Sune Lees is the captain while Danny van Niekerk makes those cameos, wouldn't you?
No, absolutely. And I mean, I'm quite excited that she's got sort of another run as the stand-in captain. It's really difficult when you sort of get thrown in to captain for one series and then you're kind of out of the mix. And I'll be honest, quite critical of her captaincy at times through the Pakistan, especially in the first three ODIs. Then she definitely started to sort of make, I would say, crisper decisions and a lot more positive decisions in the T20s. And by the time they played the third T20, it was almost like her as a person was coming out of her shell and her leadership style was coming to the fore. And that's the important thing. And we've discussed previously on the show that she's not always a natural leader. She doesn't have that big, bubbly personality that Danae has. And that's fine. Everyone has their own personalities and how they like to lead. But she would have grown from the Pakistan tour, and that would have given her a lot of confidence. And I'm really excited to see how she captains, and especially in India. So, she's got a spinning head on her. So, we'll call her for what it is. And we know the Indian pitches are going to take some spin, and it'll give her, a sort of maybe a different perspective on the game, sort of, captaining the side with that positivity behind her. And really putting her spin hat on to try and analyze and see what she should be doing from a captaincy point of view.
You said she has spinning head. She needs to put her spinning hat, but I think she needs to use her spinning arm to bowl more frequently. As far as captaincy is concerned, 13 ODIs and 12 T20s is what she's led in, losing 5 in ODIs and 6 in T20s. But most of those, let me tell you, are against India. And Ananya, do you think that will play on her mind, or is it something that numbers is something that players don't really take onto the field?
Well, look, we need to remember that when South Africa came to India in 2019, it was a very young squad where most of them hadn't experienced Indian conditions. But now the unit that has come to India, most of them have made that trip last time, and so there is a bit of experience in Indian conditions. Like we mentioned, Sunelise is kind of finding her feet as a leader. There is a bit of continuity in that captaincy. So I think, while the numbers are not great against India, she still hasn't, or she's won only one game against India so far. I think, they are, like I mentioned, they have a bit of momentum behind them. So I think as a unit, they're probably a lot more confident than they were in 2019. And, last time I think they were also playing in front of huge crowds under lights. It wasn't great for them. They didn't field at their best. They dropped a ton of catches, as I remember. And I think this time India's not going to have the same amount of crowd support. Yes, there is going to be a small crowd, but it's not going to act as another player. I think there's probably going to be less pressure that way. So while the numbers aren't great, I think South Africa are probably going to be the happier side, at least at the start of the series.
I just want to add, I totally agree. I think we often hear how difficult it is to tour to India. And in 2019, that team, and you look at the core players of Ishmael and Cup and all of them, they never beat India. They never played in those conditions. And it's almost like ludicrous to think that cricketers at the top of the game, it was the first time they were sort of traveling and really playing in Indian conditions. And that's always going to be difficult. So I think also the crowd support that also will help South Africa a little bit more. There's not going to be this massive roar behind the Indian team, but yeah, at least the core players have had experience now in India, and that's definitely going to help them.
Yeah, good that you brought up this point, Claire, that the core has experience. You mentioned Marizan Cup, and Marizan Cup in India is a different beast, isn't she? And more so with the experience that she has. What role do you see her playing? How do you see her stepping up with the bat, with the ball? What's your thought about Marizan Cup in India?
Yeah, look, I almost at times want to call her a freak of nature. She really had a fantastic Pakistan tour. South Africa didn't, our lockdown levels there were huge restrictions in terms of what anyone could do, never mind professional players and cricketers and that sort of thing. So, her preparation would have also been a little bit stunted. And we saw that actually, funny enough, in that first ODI. We were talking about, is she injured? Is she carrying a niggle? Like, what's going on? And I think it was just simple. She just hadn't had any match practice. She hadn't had the pressure. She hadn't had the ball in her hand, and trying to think batsmen out. And we always forget that side of cricket. It's, yes, you've got skills to execute, but you also have to understand why we're executing particular skills. And you've got to put that sort of, those different things together and then make sure you execute the skill perfectly. So we saw her struggle, but at least now she's sort of had a good couple of games under her belt and she's feeling a lot more confident. Cup batting in India, I think the one thing that she does really, really well in those spin conditions is she uses her feet very well. And I don't want to say using feet and exclude Mignon Dupree out of that conversation. So those are two players that in my mind are going to be pivotal for South Africa in the series because they are busy cricketers when they're at the crease. They're always looking for the gap. They don't always necessarily look for the big shots, but early on in their innings, they want to try and get their feet moving as quickly as possible to be able to manipulate the field to how they want to now go about setting up their innings. So I think that's, obviously you asked the question about Cup, so I do want to address it. So I think it's her feet and her movement and her confidence at the crease when she comes into bat that is critical. And it's going to be very important for her to impart that wisdom to the younger players in the squad. And I think her and Mignon would do that really well. And they would communicate it in a really effective way. so that all the ladies can kind of really take that on board and learn from that. From her bowling, well, I mean, she's just an absolute class above the rest when it comes to her bowling. So I think she's going to do really well. I can't see anything sort of changing up front. We know Cup and Shubnam Ismail do so well as an opening sort of combination. They might look at changing that later on when they come into the T20 series. Cup's going to have to be. It's going to be interesting to see how she plays with her links. So for me, that would be, if I was the coach, like that's where I would be having discussions with her about sort of going, okay, cool, what are we going to do with your lengths necessarily? Because I think on those Indian wickets, getting your lengths correct is really, really important. And so often we like, Cup would like to sort of put it back of a length and try and hit it in quite hard, sort of not as hard as Shubs. Shubs likes to take your head off, and we see the aggressive nature of Shubnam Ismail. But Cup sort of likes to sort of put it just back of a length and it's sort of hitting the batsman on the splice. And I think at times she might find that she's going to need to push the ball up just to be a little bit fuller in order to see what the pitch is going to give her. And so she's going to have to play around with that full, maybe pull it back a length, full, pull it back of a length. So, she's an intelligent cricketer, and I think she's going to play around with her lengths a little bit to get the most out of the pitches.
You analyzed all of Cup so wonderfully well. As a batter, I suppose either the batters are going to zoom this, kind of slow it down, hear every bit of it and work their techniques out, or they are kind of want to delete and put this clip far away into the trash. Either of these things might happen. But I enjoy a lot of cricketing things when it comes to men's cricket, women's cricket, irrespective of the format. And one of the non-cricketing things that I enjoy is watching a player's appearance. When we talk about Marizanne Kapp, I love how she plays with her hairstyle. While bowling, her bun comes up. While batting, it's the ponytail that kind of sits nicely inside that helmet. That's more about her style quotient. Her performances will all be spoken about by the numbers that will just come on your screen. Marizanne Kapp in ODIs in India, an average of over 35, a bowling average of under 20. And that's why she gives the extraordinary comfort to a skipper, much like the SXR 160. But Ananya, these are traits that a perfect all-rounder could have, should have, would have. And South Africa are very lucky to have someone like Marizanne Kapp in the ranks, isn't she? We also saw a clip on the social media that she had put. She's practicing her bowling inside her room. So tough, troubled times for batters, probably.
Well, Marizanne Kapp has always been like this thorough professional. She's always prepared for whatever she's going to do. So, yeah, I think India. She has had success against India, and like Claire said, I think her lengths are going to be key, especially if she's bowling on Indian wickets where she's not going to get as much carry as she gets in South Africa. Especially bowling to someone like Smriti Mandhana, who likes going on the back foot. If she's going to bowl that back of a length in India, she's going to get carded. And I think that's something that she learned really quickly in the last series, in the last ODI series. She brought her forward. She nicked her off a couple of times. So, yeah, that's going to be key. And I mean, before South Africa even came here, the one thing that I was looking forward to was watching Marizanne Kapp bat against spin, because I think, yes, Mignon du Preez is brilliant using her feet coming down the track. But I think, what she's not as good as Kapp at is playing off the back foot against spin. I think Marizanne Kapp is excellent off the back foot against spin, probably, one of the best going around in the world. So how she how that forces the spinners, the Indian spinners, to manipulate their length is going to be key, because we saw that in 2019 as well, where she was one of the most successful South African batters against the Indian spinners. So she is going to play a key role in that middle order. And what I want to ask Claire now is that, you mentioned both Kapp and du Preez, but what I want to understand is, we saw against Pakistan, Lara Goodall was coming in at number 4. And we know that both Kapp and du Preez are probably the best players of spin. So do you think South Africa will then probably push these two higher up, or will they still want to bring in the left-hander in the middle?
So I think obviously bringing Laura Goodall in that number 4 spot, it breaks up all those righties. And so they definitely do see that as an advantage. I'm also not convinced that Laura Goodall then should be moving further down the innings and would be sort of as successful, or, you know, you would get the best out of her as a batter. You know, ideally, I think Laura Goodall should be coming in three or four. I'm not meaning to move Sinead Lees out at all. So she has to come in at 4. The bad side with having Mignon or Kapi up too high up is if you lose a couple of quick wickets, now you don't have that experience to stabilize. And we've seen that happen a lot. Lizelle Lee struggling for runs at the moment. Her consistency is not there. Laura Wolfart, most of the time you're guaranteed she's going to get runs. I mean, obviously it's impossible all the time, but you know, you can kind of be confident that, you know, Laura Wolfart will do a job. So now you go Sinead Lees, also not bad, but she can have some issues with the batting. Now, if you suddenly are 2 or 3 down, and now you're putting in Mignon or Kapi, and now you 4 or 5 down, now at the back end you're really going to struggle. So as much as I like the theory behind bringing one of them up, and sort of getting on top of the Indian spinners, I do think you are risking it slightly on the back end of the innings, would be my summation in terms of how you've asked me the question. However, it is important. Laura Goodall needs to score runs, and she's got an opportunity, and that number 4 spot is open. South Africa, not for a long time have they had someone that they're going, cool, that number 4 position is taken. And because of that, I think she should be putting both hands up, taking the ball by the horns, and really giving her best effort to try and cement herself in that number 4 position.
Lara Goodall, not the strongest against spin, but she has a lot to practice in the net because South Africa have good spinners in their ranks. That's what we are going to talk about next. South Africa's spin strength. There's Nonkululeko Mlaba, who started her international career in India in 2019. There's Nondumiso Shangase as well. Claire, who do you see starting? What are your thoughts on South Africa's spin attack, especially with Sule Lees not using her spinning arm more?
Yeah, look, that has probably been my biggest question to myself over the last week. How are they going to approach their bowling attack? So I don't think I've still solved it in my own head. So I hope Sine and Hilton have got that question sorted. Because obviously being in India, you would love to have 2 spinners. You know, I mean, some teams would say we're going to have 3 spinners. You know, subcontinent teams would definitely have 3 spinners. South Africa definitely won't have 3 spinners, but I think it would be really encouraging if they had 2 frontline spinners. So then you say to yourself, in my opinion, Nonkululeko Mlaba is actually the first name on the starting 11. I mean, there's no debate for me. She should be the first name written down. Now, the injury to Danae van Niekerk now creates quite a lot of debate, because you would not have to now choose another spinner, because you would have Danae and you would have Sinead Lees. And both of them together, now you've got 3 spinners, and all of them can hold their own, especially obviously Danae. But now we don't have Danae. So now the question is, are we happy that Sinead can hold her end and get through a decent amount of overs? Coming out of the Pakistan tour, I think the answer would be no. We are not 100% confident. We see that there are glimpses that there could be something positive coming out of Sinead's bowling, but she needs to put the work in, and she needs to get more practice. So I kind of see Hilton after that Pakistan tour saying to Sinead, we're going to India. We need you to bowl. All you are doing for the next couple of weeks is bowling and bowling and bowling and getting your confidence up, because that would be a huge help if South Africa could, you know, get 6 to 8 or even 10 overs out of Sinead. Would be fantastic, because now you almost have another gap for another steamer. So to answer the question, I think South Africa will go with like a 4-1 split in terms of the bowlers. I don't think they'll go 3-2, although 3-2 would be very confident move. It would be a very proactive move. but I don't believe they would do it now because they don't have Dene. So I definitely think Nonkululeko Malaba will definitely start, and I have been really excited about her bowling. Seeing how well she did in the Pakistani tour, I think she did phenomenally well. I mean, I think the first ODI, she bowled something like 45 dot balls in that first ODI. It was just absolutely phenomenal. So she's a talented bowler, and against the Pakistan team, who, yes, they weren't top of their game, but they are also very good at playing spin. So, you know, you would expect of her to have had a sort of a hard time against them. And then, you know, coming to Shangazi, that would be kind of the risk in putting her in, because now you're obviously taking out an opportunity for a seamer. And although Shangazi's got some good opportunities and she's held her own, so I'm an absolute fan, and I think she needs more opportunities. I just don't believe she's going to get the opportunity in the first 3 ODIs. I think if South Africa are playing some good cricket, they're confident, and they've got a win or 2 under their belts, I think then you're going to see Nondumiso Shangazi come in, and she must come in. So I'm also pro her getting at least 2 or 3 games in the ODI series, and I'd also like to see her sort of, you know, getting a T20 game or 2. But I don't think she'll be in the starting 11 at least in the first 2 ODIs.
Just to ask another question on top of that, Claire, we see a lot of coaches or a lot of captains talking about matchups these days. And so do you think that India not having, well, Smriti Mandana is the only left-hander likely to play in the first few games. So do you think that's another reason why they probably wouldn't give Shangazi a go, considering the number of right-handers in that lineup?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, you know, Malaba is your lefty, and she, you know, and so, you know, she just also gives you a sort of a different angle that she comes in on her approach. You know, Sune is your leggy, so you kind of, you know, got all of that covered with the lefty and then the leggy. So I do think, you know, Shangazi or right arm or break, like how much extra is she going to give? As you said, you've only got 1 lefty in the batting lineup. I don't believe though that that would be the reason. So I don't think that's the primary reason that she wouldn't be in the starting 11 for the first 2 or 3 ODIs. I think it's probably more from where South Africa feel they're strongest, and who has probably the most confidence out of the spinners going into the series. So I think that's probably where it comes down to more.
Yeah, let's have a glance at the squad graphic once more. Ananya, coming to you, there's a lot of team options that this squad has. We've talked about a lack of spinning options with South Africa. They're likely to play with one in the first ODI, etc. But are you also surprised with the less number of spinners that they've carried on their second almost successive tour? We can say, because it's the second time they're touring India in 18 months. They kind of delayed announcing the squad. First of all, we understand why, but are you kind of surprised that they don't have more spinning options in their ranks? Because when we talk about Dane van Niekerk and Chloe Tryon missing, it generally accounts for their batting strength, but both of them bowl spin. It's not just Dane van Niekerk, but it's also Chloe Tryon bowls left arm spin. So are you surprised that they don't have more spinners in their ranks?
Honestly, no. I think South Africa have kind of backed their strengths. I mean, we've seen this with India. They go to New Zealand or Australia with only 2 seamers, or sometimes only 3. So I'm not surprised that South Africa have come with the number of seamers that they have, because they obviously back their strengths and think those seamers are better than the spinners they have. So there's this theory of why would you want to play a spinner if they're not as good as the seamer. So I think that's why they've come in with the squad they've come in, and they're all very, very good bowlers. So you wouldn't want to drop any of them.
I think also if I just added to that is, you know, you've just mentioned Dane and Chloe. So you would assume they're going to come back into the mix. So, you know, now you're covering yourselves. You've got Dane, you've got Chloe, you've got, I can't even remember all the names. You know, you've got Malaba, you've got Shangazi, and you've got Suneli. So now you're talking about 5 potential spin options. And I think most teams would say, well, yes, maybe we only have 2.5, if you call Sinelisa half of a spinner at the moment. We don't know. Maybe she's going to come in and bowl 30 overs in the first 3 ODIs. We absolutely, I totally agree, bowler. So I think South Africa feel confident that they've got it covered. They're giving some young spinners experience in Malava and Shangasi while you don't have Chloe and Danae around. So it's clever. You've got a core group of spinners that they can do the job. You're building your youngsters, you're giving them some opportunities to sort of broaden that pool of spinners. So and I totally agree. South Africa have always seen seam as their strength, so they wouldn't want to then now drop. And they've got some very good seamers. I mean, they've got an issue now. I'm sure we'll talk about the starting 11. It's going to be a tough call who actually gets that look in.
Yeah, we'll come down to that right away. The possible 11th. Remember, it's a 17-member South African squad that has toured India. It's one shot from what they had played against Pakistan. Masabata Class missed out due to a last-minute injury, is what the statement read from South Africa when they had announced the squad. So 17 members to choose from. Claire, let's go ahead with you first. Your possible 11th, that one slot that you're talking about. Which spot is that? Who are the contenders? What's your take first ODI tomorrow? What's their likely 11 going to be?
So I think the batting is pretty short. I don't see many sign up to openings. You're gonna have around and getting good exposure, playing on different tracks and in around the world. But she easily gets through to a couple of wickets, and her economy rate is normally quite good. She does have the odd game where she can go for a good couple of runs, but all bowlers are going to say you're going to have that bad day at the office. So you'll definitely have Nadine in. You're going to have Chetty's going to be the keeper, especially in the first few runs. Sonala Japta is in the side, and I'm a big fan of hers. But they'll definitely give Chetty a run up front and make sure her hands are working nicely and are efficient. Shubs Chetty, and then Malava we've mentioned will be there. So you've now got an 11th position, and my opinion would be now the toss-up is going to be between Kaka and whether they give Tumi Sekakune a run. And so I think the toss-up is going to be between Ayabonga and Tumi. I think that's going to be the debate in the changing room. Off air I said earlier, I think they're going to make that call based on pitch conditions and trying to see what might be happening out there in the middle. There's not much to choose between the two. Ayabonga Kaka has got a lot more experience than Tumi, so that might give her a foot in the door a little bit earlier. New conditions, Indian conditions, seamers have to. People always laugh, but I say you have to think a little bit more when you're bowling on those pitches. You can't you're not in Australia or England where you're going to get the seam, or Australia you're going to get the bounce, or South Africa. So you really have to think a lot. And so maybe we'll see that Ayabonga Kaka might get a run earlier on in the series, and that would be because of her experience. But I'm really excited about Tumi Sekakune. I think she's a lovely bowler. I think she's got a fantastic action, and she brings the right kind of energy to the crease when she's bowling. So that would be my starting 11. It would be interesting to hear the other thoughts around the chat.
Ananya, your call?
I have to agree completely with the 11 that you put out. I penciled in Ayabonga Kaka as well instead of Tumi Sekakune. So I think she in 2019 she had a very good tour of India. I think she bowled some very good slower balls in very slow conditions in Baroda and Surat. So I think they're going to go with her in the first couple of games, like you mentioned. And to me as well, I think last time she came in, of course, did quite well here. I think she was quite handy in those middle overs, really dried up the runs. And also, like you mentioned, brought a lot of energy in the field. She was one of their best fielders on that tour. So yeah, I think they're going to start with Kaka as well.
Haka seems to be the majority here. A wonderful point that you mentioned, and Tumi Sekukune, the energy that she brings onto the field, because that is what South Africa needs. If we purely go by what they did on the field against Pakistan in those tense moments, in those close games, the ODIs as well as T20Is. Well then, let's take some fan questions on this note. There are a few that we have. Here's the first one. Where Trisha Chetty should bat, at the lower order or at 3 like last time in the 2019 ODI series against India? Claire, would you like to take that? Trisha Chetty's batting order? Ritvik Adhar asks us this.
Yeah, I think Trisha will definitely come further down in the batting lineup. Look, Trisha's a fantastic batter. Her provincial record speaks for herself with her batting. When I was still playing, which was a very long time ago, so I'm giving away my age here, but Trisha and I batted together, and she's a fantastic bat. I love watching her bat because I also find her really busy but calm. There are not many players that you can say are busy but calm at the same time. And I think Sinead Lees needs to sort of find her own in that number 3 position with Laura Goodall, as we've already discussed. So I think I wouldn't be in support of putting Trisha Chetty sort of at number 3, although she can do it. So I'm not saying she can't do it. But I just think from what you do to the rest of the batting lineup, I think if there's too much negativity that you would put in by bringing Trisha Chetty up and bat her at 3.
Fair answer that. The second one is also from Ritvika. She asked, what should be the ideal batting order? Ananya, we've talked at length about this, but your thoughts on the batting order, who should bat where? Should Trisha, you can take that as well. Should she bat up? Should she bat down? Your thoughts?
Well, I think Claire has I think mentioned an ideal batting order. I think I thought, in my head, I was like considering probably pushing Lara Goodall down the order, considering how good both Kaap and Dupree are against spin. But I think she made a valid point that you would like a lefty to break up the right-handers, and also it's probably an opportunity for someone like Lara Goodall to take it and really cement that position. And when Dane van Niekerk comes back, you probably won't see both Mignon and Kaap at 4 and 5. So it's probably better to give them as much practice at 5 and 6. And so I think South Africa are going to go with Lee, Wolvaardt, Lees, Lara Goodall, Mignon Dupree, Marzan Kaap, Trisha Chetty, or Nadine de Klerk, Trisha Chetty, something like that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much going to be how they bat. What I'm really interested to see is how Lizelle Lee goes at the top of the order. I think she's going to, she's going to be very happy that India don't have Shikha Pandey and her front pad is not in trouble. But yeah, I think how she starts is going to be crucial for South Africa, because last time I don't think they got off to the best starts. The one match that she did fire, they won. So how she starts, Laura Wolvaardt, of course, is as consistent as they come, at least in recent times. So I think Lizelle Lee is really going to, I suppose, either put South Africa in the driver's seat or maybe put a lot of pressure on them early.
Your thoughts about Kaap and Dupree having fun before Dane van Niekerk kind of reminds me how in school we used to have all the fun before the teacher walked into the class. So it's almost back to school days for South African batting. The last fan question is, which South African spinner can trouble the Indian batters most? Which of you wants to take that? Which spinner will trouble the Indian batters?
So I'm going to answer this in 2 parts. So I'm covering myself. I'll put a disclaimer out. I really want to say Sinead Lees because I really hope that she bowls her full 10 overs, or even 6 to 8 overs. I would be over the moon with. And I think I keep coming back to this point because we all know and we've seen how well she can bowl. And leggies are always going to be slightly inconsistent. And you always know you're going to get that bad ball in an over, or a bad ball, or 2 bad balls out of 12. But they can be so dangerous. And I think in these conditions, Sunay really, really, really could do very well and could trouble the Indian batters. But she's the captain, so she might not bowl herself that much. So that's why I have to use my disclaimer, because otherwise I'm going to look like I'm terrible at doing this job. So then my next response would be Mlaba. I think I hope that Mlaba has a really good series. I've said off air that I think it's a series that she could really come into her own, and she's been a good a performer for South Africa, and I think people know about her. But I think this series can really take her from being a good cricketer to a great cricketer, and people going, wow, who's this Mlaba that's a spinner, lefty that can open the bowling for South Africa. I just have this feeling that this series could really sort of escalate her in the eyes of women's world cricket.
Let me add a condition here and ask you, if the spinners, South African spinners, let's say Mlaba, because we don't know Sune Lee's and her spinning abilities yet, but will someone like Nonsuleku Mlaba enjoy bowling to Indian top order more, or would she kind of be fine with bowling to the middle and lower middle order? Because we saw how effective she was in the ODIs against Pakistan, bowling to the likes of Javeria Khan. She was a maiden wicket, of course. So that's what India's top order also looks like. Slow starters take their time. So do you think she'd be loving to bowl to the top order or the middle order? What's your thought on that?
So that's a really good question. And I'm going to answer it by saying I would compare your Indian top order with the Pakistan top order. And in my opinion, the Indian top order are world class if you compare it to the Pakistan sort of opening or top 3 or top 4. We spoke at length about the Pakistani batting lineup and how they missed a lot of things. They made a huge amount of mistakes. We thought the batting order at times also really all over the place. So I think that's the easiest way to actually answer that question is the Indian top 4 are fantastic batters. They know how to hold their own, and I think Mlaba is very young as a spin bowler, and I'm not going to say she's going to struggle, but she's going to have to learn very quickly in order to be and give the Indian batters a hard time up front. So she would probably feel a little bit more comfortable bowling to the middle order of the Indian batters, but I think it is a very important learning curve for her to bowl at the top order batsman of India, because if she can bowl against Mithali Raj and come out of there and go, I didn't get tonked all over, or I really held my own, they only managed to pick up 4 runs and over, I picked up 2 wickets. In terms of her growth, that is going to be absolutely fantastic. But it is going to be a very anxious and almost uncomfortable place for her to be bowling against the likes of just those fantastic batters. And I think that's going to be a really interesting competition and battle to see how it sort of materializes over the 5 ODIs.
And just to add to what Claire said, sorry, I think we saw this on the previous tour as well, where the Indian batters kind of sized her up in her first couple of overs in that first T20 and then tonked her all over the place. So I think they're probably going to take a similar approach where they wouldn't want her to settle, because she's obviously going to be their premier spinner in the lineup. And from personal experience, having bowled to Mithali Raj, I know I'm not a spinner, but if you can hold your own against her and potentially not concede, say, too many runs, it kind of lifts your confidence to no end. And I think if she's able to, especially as a spinner, because I think Mithali Raj is probably India's best player of spin, both coming forward, going back. She can manipulate the field. She's a master of that. So if she can hold her own against someone like Mithali Raj, I think she'll like Claire said, definitely grow leaps and bounds. And I think what's also going to be really good for her is the fact that she probably has a chance to learn over 5 ODIs. So that's potentially 50 overs against really high quality batters. So, whether she gets a ton of wickets or not, she's definitely going to go back to South Africa with a ton of lessons.
It's a lovely assessment. She'll be rich with experience, if not nothing at all. But 17-member South African squad. First ODI begins tomorrow at 9 a.m. IST, which is 5:30, 6:30 in South Africa. Early alarm times for the Proteas at home. Join us for the live shows as well, before the match, during the match, in the mid-inning, as well as the post-match. That's it from this edition. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Ananya, for your time. It was lovely having you on the Outside View Live, powered by Vespa and Aprilia. See you tomorrow.
You're late.
Don't just live life, maxify it.